Hello and welcome to Experimentation Masters, the leading resource for business experimentation. Join fellow innovators, strategists, and entrepreneurs to learn practical tips, methods, and techniques from world-leading experts in experimentation. Design better experiments, lead with more confidence, and have greater impact in your organization. Now please welcome your host, Gavin Bryant.
Hello and welcome to the Experimentation Masters podcast. Today, I would like to welcome Bidani to the show. Eden is the founder of Greenlight Copy, an agency that helps businesses to develop smarter messaging strategies to convert more customers. She's also trained in anthropology and sociology. In this episode, we're going to discuss how to create a killer value proposition for your product. I'm really looking forward to this one, diving into all things value proposition. So I thought a good place to start with diving into value proposition territory would be firstly to understand what is a value proposition and an overview of value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good value prop. So a value prop, obviously we're just differentiating for a second between what a value prop is or a VP versus a USP or a unique selling proposition. Unique selling proposition is what makes one business different, fundamentally different to any other business. What is the one offer or the one outcome or the one audience that this particular business helps, or the result that they're able to drive compared to any other business that could potentially do the same thing as they do. But value propositions are, there's kind of a basic formula, and the way you think about it, you can say, I help insert audience to achieve insert result by means of insert the product or service. So it's really connecting the three different elements together, connecting the audience, connecting the result or outcome that you're able to help them achieve, and then by means of which service or product that your business is providing.
Mm-hmm. So in relationship to important conversion factors, where does it sit in the conversion factor hierarchy? Is it king?
It's not king. I would say the USP is definitely king, the unique selling proposition, because it's not, today, for example, if you look at the MarTech landscape, there's thousands and thousands of MarTech products out there, and all of them are in niches or in fields that overlap as well. So they all need to have a unique selling proposition, what makes them different from all the other players. And that's just MarTech. So there can be anything for e-commerce, for fashion, clothes, food, etc. Just absolutely everything you can imagine. All the markets are very competitive. So unless you're launching in a blue ocean or you're launching in a completely new market with a completely new product, completely new positioning and everything, completely new strategic narrative, that's something else entirely. But having a unique selling proposition that's really king, because that's what helps customers say, okay, so you can do X, this company does Y, and help them really make that final decision between different companies in the same field. Value propositions, though, are a close second, because they really help the audience understand why you are good for them and how you can help them. So it aligns with not just what they might be looking for if they're product aware or solution aware. So they're looking for a solution or looking for something to help them with a specific problem. They know that there are products out there that can help them. A value proposition helps align with that stage of awareness, but it also helps align with people in other stages of awareness too. So if they're unaware or pain or problem aware, it helps them understand. It just helps them grasp, oh, right, so you're able to help people who struggle with problems like A, B, C, D, and they see themselves in that value proposition and they're able to connect with the company, and then it will help them generate curiosity and engagement with the company.
So what do we think makes a great value proposition?
A great value proposition is really something that's customer centric. So it really, and if I would almost argue that the product or service or the how you deliver the value proposition, that's something that can vary. So if we look at the core formula as we looked again, so if you take I help insert audience to achieve a certain result or outcome, it should be connected to the product, but the product is secondary. So that's the feature, or you just say we connect features and benefits. So we're really looking at making sure that the audience has a strong understanding of who you serve, so they can see themselves in the copy or see themselves on the page or in the content that you have published online. And then they understand what you're helping them achieve. So at the end of the day, we know that people don't, if you look at jobs to be done, people don't buy products. People don't buy services for the product or service. They buy it because they're looking to drive a specific kind of transformation. So making sure by highlighting that you're helping them accelerate to get to that transformation, that's what's going to help capture their attention. The service or product, the what of how you do it, again, that can change. So companies add new features, companies add new services, companies add new elements to their offers. But the core, I think the real core of that is nailing down the audience and nailing down the results that you're able to help them achieve.
Okay. And do you have any personal favorite value propositions that you often use as an example or as an inspiration for how to articulate a value proposition most clearly?
That's a really good question. Not something specifically off the top of my head, but there are many. One of the best ways that I like to usually source these value propositions, and so I'll give a couple of examples just a second. One of the best ways I find to get to them is by actually speaking with the customers themselves. So actually having those one-on-one conversations or doing deep customer research, if that's review mining, social listening and things like that as well, that can really help highlight what those core value propositions are. So I'll give you an example. I once worked with a hair company a while back. They were creating an organic hair care product that was to help women regrow some of the hair as they're falling out. Women, as they start getting older, then most of them start to experience some sort of hair loss because that's just one of the things that happens. But this company had a product that was helping strengthen and replenish their hair. So going through social listening, we realized that people weren't talking about having gorgeous hair back again. They were talking about, I wanted the hair of my teens back. So they remembered back to their teenage, when they were high school and their teenagers, and they remember their hair was thick, it was very luscious, it was very strong and healthy. And that's what the words that they were using. They were saying, I want the hair of my teens back. So we took that and we turned that into a value proposition for the hair of your 20s, in your 40s, 50s and beyond. So in that value proposition, obviously it's very clear who the audience is, but it's also very clear what the outcome is. And it was because it's talking about hair, it was already very obvious to them what kind of service or product was able to help them achieve that result. When you were looking at how the message was positioned with all the other deliverables and elements around it, it was easy for them to understand how they were doing that. So the what, how they did the what, so the features and how they delivered that. But that was the core audience element and the achieved result that they were able to achieve as well. Yep. Another one was when I worked back with a company that created a product for insomniacs. So they'd been previously afraid to own the fact that the product was 76% effective, but it was 76% effective. It was no pills. It wasn't any treatments. That it was actually something that would actually help them learn to fall asleep by themselves. So it was actually something that they wouldn't have to keep using for the rest of their life to help treat their insomnia. It was actually going to help them get out of their insomnia by themselves without any kind of other medical intervention. And that was something that we found was really attractive. So we actually turned that into the value proposition, 76% effective with no pills, no using it for the rest of your life. And so that was actually something that was very attractive to them because that aligned with what they were struggling with right now. But it also really highlighted what kind of results that the audience is going to achieve. It highlighted, of course, it's for insomniacs, but it also highlighted that core benefit they're not going to have to use. So no pills, no medicines, no chemicals, but that they also wouldn't have to go on using it for the rest of their life, which was also addressing a fear that the audience had.
Two great examples. Thank you. So just thinking about what a value proposition isn't. So what are some of those elements when we think about a value proposition that it is not?
I think a value proposition is not, I would say it's not a feature, it's not a product that you offer, unless the product or the feature of one of the services or the service that you offer is that differentiator between one company to another company. So if you're differentiating by your product or your service or a feature of the product or service or the offer that you have, then you can use that as an element of a value proposition. Other than that, it's not something that's a particular use for the audience. It's not, again, as we mentioned, services and products and offers change all the time. People add new features to SaaS products. They add, additional products to a line of hair care products, or they change the colors of the buttons, or they upgrade the hardware on a machine or on a device for some insomniacs. So that changes from time to time. So when they're talking about specifically just the effectiveness or just the product itself, it's actually it leads to a point where everyone's competing on the same types of products. So someone will come out next time with a product that's 78% effective, or someone will come out with a product that's 100% effective. So it's going to be very difficult to differentiate, or it's going to be very difficult to keep the audience's attention and help explain why you're so different if you're just focusing on the result, or if you're just focusing on the product. It's really that combination of the audience niche and the results that you're delivering for them as well.
When I was thinking about that one, a couple of other things that I thought about as well that can sometimes be confusing for product teams, that, for instance, a brand, a logo, or maybe a slogan as well. For instance, Nike, "Just Do It" is not a VP, and also a mission and vision statement. So it seems like there can be sometimes some confusion around those elements and their relevance to value proposition.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's definitely never a slogan. It's never a tagline. It's never anything that you'd find in a mission statement. And it's not really something you'd find in a strategic narrative or a brand story as well either. These are really elements that are drilling down. So usually strategic narratives and brand stories, they're internal, and they don't usually go into the depth of describing unpacking all the different value propositions that a business has. So you're absolutely right. It's usually it's what we find as a result of customer research.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So that's a good segue into our next question. So where do we all start? How do we help people get an on-ramp to developing a killer value proposition? And that starts in research. So what are some of the tactics and strategies that you use to unearth those jobs to be done, the needs and the problems to frame up the value proposition?
Yeah, absolutely. My two absolute favorite methods are trying to speak with customers one-on-one as much as possible, and then also running anonymous surveys. So I actually like to balance the two off. And from my studies in anthropology, that interviewing people one-on-one and really sitting with them and being able to ask them lots of questions and have them open up and really unpack what was happening in their lives at the time when they first realized that they needed help solving a certain problem, what they were looking to achieve in terms of, what result they were looking to achieve, and then how they came across the product, how they discovered it, what was the process, the decision-making process that they went through, how much time they spent in evaluation. Just really being able to sit with them and unpack all those elements of the journey gives you a wealth of information about their problems, about their needs, about what their transformation that they were ultimately looking for as a result. So not just, again, so it means I can sleep better. So what does that mean? So it means you can sleep better. So it means you'll be more active, have more energy during the day, which means you'll feel happy, more fulfilled, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just unpacking the what, it's really taking them through their entire journey as a result of using the product. I like to balance that out as well with anonymous surveys. The reason why I do anonymous surveys, and when I say anonymous surveys, it's usually I'd like to try and do that as well of the larger customer base. So whereas you can get a good handful of customer interviews, anywhere between 5 to 10 really solid customer interviews, you can get hundreds of anonymous responses, and people feel much more comfortable sharing their responses when they're anonymous. So I won't ask for someone's name specifically. I won't ask for their details specifically, so they won't connect. So they won't be able to connect it. The company won't be able to connect it to a specific customer or a specific order or a specific client. But giving them that privacy lets them open up. It makes them feel more comfortable to open up and actually give you a lot more information in the survey itself. So even if you have a survey that takes just 5 minutes via email or type form or whatever, however you'd like to run it. But when I mean anonymous, it does mean you can ask for general, what's your position at work or what's your rough age group, things like that. But they will feel very comfortable to share their actual opinion or their actual experience. You say, so what was happening in your life when you decided that you need help? So asking almost some of the same questions that I'd ask in a one-on-one interview, but asking them at scale. So then you're able to toggle back and look at the two types of evidence. So we have qualitative evidence that's quantifiable, given the number of responses that we get. At the same time, we have really, really rich qualitative evidence and the qualitative information and voice of customer research in the one-on-one interview. So, and then when you bring those two together, you can clearly see which elements, which phrases, which value propositions that people are talking about the most, or what's concerning them the most. And I really find that's a good way to balance between the two, and then you bring those two pieces of information together to have really, really strong hypotheses about which value propositions you should move forward with.
Mm-hmm. I'd read a piece of research a little while ago. I think it was by Profitwell, and they'd suggested that 70% of SaaS companies aren't speaking to their customers regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a more broader piece across marketing as well, that how difficult is it to try and understand your customer and their needs if people are so unwilling to talk to them?
So I think there needs to be a big shift in mindset. I'm not sure if it's marketers and the companies themselves aren't willing, and I'm not sure if it's the customers aren't willing. I think there's some skepticism about the results that it can drive, I think, or just how deep the insights are. And I think there's some skepticism around the time investment as well that it takes in order to do that, because it's not there. It does take time to schedule them. It does take time to sit and talk to them. It does take time to get a transcript. It does take time to go through the information that you collect in the call and then analyze it. That does take a lot of time. I know there are people working on SaaS for that actually right now to help consolidate voice of customer research. Looking forward to those tools coming out as well. But at the same time, there needs to be more discussion about just how significant the impact of that one-on-one customer research really is. And I'll just give you an example. A while back, I was working with a company. They had a content management system, and they were looking to scale up. But some of the problems the company was having is that they were aiming for enterprise-sized clients, but the company had a small team. So for them to try and handle these enterprise clients with all their micro customizations and things that they needed, it was very, very difficult. Struggling to strike the balance between price and service. And the enterprise companies just wanted more and more upgrades and customizations and things that the company was struggling to deliver to them. So when I spoke with the clients one-on-one, with the clients' clients, a lot of them were actually feeling really frustrated because they felt that they should be getting more, even though they weren't paying very much. They felt still that they should be getting more. As an enterprise client, they felt they should be getting more. So what we were able to do was take that information away, and we were actually able to apply that to the business. So this ended up applying not to the entire business structure, not just in terms of their marketing assets that they went on to create as a result of this. It actually caused a fundamental shift in the entire business. So what they did was they opened up a freemium tier. They had a free trial before, but they opened up a freemium tier, and they opened up tiered plans for solo users and for small teams. So they could start building up a small base of customers using the product regularly who weren't enterprise clients, but people who still wanted to use the content management system themselves, and they were able to still get value out of it. They could build up a pool of regular users, 100,000, 2,000, etc., building on from that. They would have that constant money coming in. It was totally hands-off for them and their devs. So they didn't have to go do micro customizations and things like that for every single lower tier user. But that also meant that they have funds coming in on a regular basis every single month from the monthly plans that they have, and they can still then invest more time and more energy in handling enterprise clients because they have they have other streams of income coming in, so they're not completely reliant on enterprise anymore. And that was just as a result of conducting about 6 customer interviews, and it really helped their business. I mean, within the first week of making that switch over, they brought someone on for a free trial. They loved it so from the freemium plan, they loved it so much they actually upgraded to full paid plan by the end of the week. So they didn't even. So it created a really quick and dramatic change, and it was something that was just fascinating to watch. So I think they underestimate the true value of what it does, because it ends up not just being for marketing or conversion optimization. It ends up being for the product, for just even the actual business itself, and being able to innovate and stay in front and be on top of what customers want, but then also being smart in terms of the entire strategy of the business and how that works. So they were able to actually just take that information and get to a place where they're really comfortable from all perspectives.
That's amazing. One of the things that you touched on there, that conducting qualitative interview, it requires preparation, it requires planning, it requires time, and there's an element of skill involved. And one of the things that I've experienced through my work with product teams is that it requires practice too. So as people become more proficient at it, they become more confident, then their capability and the outputs that they can drive through qualitative research, it increases exponentially. So I think initially taking those steps to start doing it can be quite challenging and confronting, but over time it does yield, as you've just highlighted through that example, significant and amazing outcomes for the business holistically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, yes, there is a time investment. Yes, there is juggling back and forth of organizing. Yes, there is learning how to ask the right questions, learning how to break the ice, learning how to actually get through, and not asking pointed questions. So what do you think of our amazing new feature? And it's like, so what was your impression of X, Y, Z? So making sure that you're not asking loaded or pointed questions as well, making sure that you're actually giving them room and making them feel comfortable and free to express themselves. I think one of the other things is it can be difficult because I assume we all have very high opinions of the companies that we work for. So if you're working internally at a company, obviously you like your company, otherwise you wouldn't really be there. It's very hard to make sure that you keep that bias out of the questions that you're asking, so that you're really looking to get the customer's opinion. Like I said, you're not looking for NPS results, like for us. You're not running an NPS survey here. You're actually looking to learn more about the customer, get as close to the customer as possible.
Yeah. Less about confirmation and more about learning and understanding.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's fast forward then. So we've done our qualitative research with our customers. We've done some survey. We've got an enormous amount of insight there. How do you help people escape that messiness to be able to establish the key themes? And you touched on formulating those foundational hypotheses. Are there any tips or tactics that you find useful for escaping that messiness at the front end?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best thing is to really strongly document all that information as much as possible. So one of the things that I would recommend is trying to get all that information into a spreadsheet. So trying to log that information. So actually split things up by sentiment or by problem or by which element of the value proposition as well that you're looking at. So if you have full sentences of voice of customer data, or if you have full responses where it was 100% relevant and it was on target, because sometimes your customers will actually tell you to your face what your value propositions are, which is also a great example. But at the same time, it's usually that process of actually logging it in a spreadsheet, and then you're able to sit back and have a look at the data and look at the patterns and see how many times people express a specific sentiment, or how many times people express they were looking for result X, or how many times they were describing a particular feature. So you can rank them as well then in terms of their order of importance. And so then you have a very strong hypothesis going forward. You say, so majority of people have said this, let's focus on that. The highest number of people have said this, that's going to be the second thing we'll focus on, and then third, and so on and so forth.
So establishing effectively like a hierarchy and an order of those needs, and I guess initially working towards those highest order needs to begin with, and testing and learning going forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about competitor research, where does that piece of the puzzle fit into your equation?
So it fits in. It's something that I like to do alongside the customer research. In terms of competitor research, it's not something that needs to be, in most cases, what you really need to do is to be doing almost like a SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, rather than actually digging into how are they saying their message and how we can make it better. Because what they're saying, you don't know if what they might be a very well-funded company, but you have no idea how well their messaging is actually working for them. You have no idea how strong their value propositions really are. You can't say, well, they just raised 300 million in their Series C, and we think it's based on the new strategic narrative that they have. It is, you have no idea what was actually going on in the company. You have no idea if that's what is actually driving their success. So it's best to have a general understanding of what they are, how they're speaking to their customers, but to not rely on that, not to say, so they're doing X, so we need to do better than X. We need to say, well, that's what they're doing. What are our customers saying to us? If what your customers are saying and what their customers are saying, or what the messages they're putting out are very similar, that's when I'd look to probe a bit deeper into the original customer research and say, okay, so they're saying similar things. Let's find the points of differentiation specifically between our company and the competitor. And that's something that can usually be picked up very quickly once you actually remove all the other variables. I think a lot of companies fall into the trap where they say, oh, this company is saying, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're saying that we're 78% effective. Let's say we're 100% effective. And then it just becomes a race about the product. It doesn't take into the element of what consumers are actually looking for.
Yeah, quite often what I can see as well is imitation dressed up as innovation. And to your point, that it's very easy to fall into that trap of effectively copying competitors to just put a stake in the marketplace. And then everyone ends up just a race to the bottom, squabbling over market share. So I think that's something that can very easily happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's think about then you mentioned about differentiation. What are the ways that you really tease and draw out those core elements of the product benefit that will serve that underlying customer need and those jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at the unique points of differentiation, it's a matter of mapping out really what the company's strengths are compared to what other companies are claiming that their strengths are. So it's really looking at, and that's where we do come back and touch on that competitor research that we've done. So really looking at how are they targeting their audience, how are they speaking to their audience, and then, that's what they're saying. It doesn't mean that we should be copying that. We need to look deeply into what our customers say that they really like about us. So it's not just about the features. It's not just about that. So maybe it's the customer service. So there are lots of companies, for example, nowadays it's almost a fight for customer service because people are so sick of companies not have these amazing big companies, but then they have zero customer service. If you hear all the time people complaining, I think a lot on LinkedIn about the service that they get from their Facebook reps or their Google reps, like it's almost impossible to speak with sometimes a real person, especially in Facebook. It's almost impossible to speak with a real person if ad account has been banned. It's just all automated. You can't put through appeals. There's no one there waiting to listen to, or you can't actually get to a real person. So a company that's going to be an ad platform that emphasizes that you have a specific account manager or you have a rep that you will always be able to, you will actually be able to talk to them. It's not automated. It's not just going to be automated and then reviewed by a rep at some point, that you actually do have someone one-on-one to talk with. That's going to be a very, very strong value proposition. It might even be the unique selling proposition. It might be a platform that's essentially Facebook in every single way, but they have that element of customer service. That's a real pain point for other companies, but at the same time, it's a real bonus for people who are struggling with that element in other companies. So it's really a matter of looking deeper into what else. So it might not just be about the product, it might be those other elements, the service or the offering or the messaging or the branding, anything that might be slightly different. And even in cases where companies are slightly similar, even something as much as having a very strong brand voice or a very hip or unique or cool brand voice that's directed towards a more specific type of target audience in terms of how they connect with that brand voice versus a more corporate or a more monotone or a more calmer brand voice, which is what some other people will gravitate to. So there's a lot of different points of differentiation, and they don't have to be huge and they don't have to be bombastic. But as long as you can find those points of differentiation, that's really going to help. It's going to help solidify the value proposition, especially the unique selling proposition.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about some of the challenges that companies have with value proposition, what are some of the common mistakes that they make in trying to form the value proposition?
So I think some of the common mistakes that these companies make is not doing enough of that customer research, I really think, because they often say, well, we want to say A, B, C. Our product or our service does a X, Y, Z very, very, very well. And so we know those are our strong points. It's like, it's great, but is that really what your customer is most impressed by? Is that really what makes a customer sit back and go, wow, I really want to learn more about this company because they do X, Y, Z? And we often find that when, especially if you've done jobs to be done, interviews, that it's not, that's why I said in the beginning when formulating a value prop, it's not always about the specific service of the product, it's how you're connecting, helping the specific audience and helping them achieve the result. The how and the why and sort of the what of that changes, and it can be fluid, again, depending on the offers and the features. But a lot of people get fixated on the what or the how they deliver it, and that is not often the point. So, for example, a lot of companies say that for an e-commerce company, they'll say, well, we ship in 24 hours, or we have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Pretty much most companies these days will offer 24-hour shipping, and most of them will offer a 30-day or a 60-day or a 90-day money-back guarantee. So those are value propositions, but I challenge them to see if they can find something that's even a bit stronger.
Yeah, I like the example you gave previously about the insomniac, that effectively they're Clark Kent in their world right now, and battling insomnia is very challenging, and that has many knock-on effects in life. But then once they utilize the product, there's this Superman moment where they completely transform, and they have more energy, more vibrancy. The quality of their life is far superior. So it's really thinking about that current state and future state, and what's the bridge to be able to get them to cross that block effectively to unlock all those benefits of that new reality of being Superman.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've discussed, we can see there's lots of different layers to it as well. So there's a layer of how you deliver it. It's a layer of that branding voice and internal branding, or the entire kind of marketing approach. There's the layer of, there's multiple different layers, customers' fears, customers' expectations, all these things like that. And so there's lots of different layers that go into deciding that. But as you mentioned, it's about aligning with what that transformation they're looking to achieve, and making sure that's communicated in some way. It doesn't necessarily mean that on a website for drills you're going to say renovate your kitchen, or make your kitchen feel warm and loving and friendly, because that's not necessarily what people are going to be thinking about. But you can communicate that through the images or through other things that you do as well. I mean, I'm just relating that back to the original story. It's of jobs to be done. It's like people don't buy a drill, they buy a 1/4-inch hole, but they don't buy a 1/4-inch hole in the wall. They're buying the approval from family and friends that come and see the new painting that you've hung up on the wall and admire it. So that's really what the drill that you're looking to buy is actually doing for you. So it's not anything, it's not the painting, it's not the wall, it's actually getting that approval and that having those warm and fuzzy moments with your family or with friends. So that's not something necessarily that you're going to call out on a website if you're selling drills, but that is something that you can reference in imagery that you use, the brand voice as well that you use to describe it. You will be talking obviously about drills, but you'll be talking about what you can do with the drills and to give them ideas about how you're able to align with what their expectations are, what they're looking to achieve. So sometimes you can't always connect it to the end transformation, especially if it's in a product it's a high commodity, so like a drill or like a plant or or anything else, or a set of glasses from IKEA. But at the same time, there are ways that you can continue to communicate those other elements of the value proposition to help bring it all together and to make sure that you are communicating that end result of the transformation.
Yeah, with jobs to be done, there's those three core elements. There's the functional, the drill, then there's the social and the emotional. So to your point that you can use other references and elements to really tap into the social and emotional elements of the jobs to be done to help customers cross that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just recapping then. So number one piece of advice to people if they're formulating their value proposition is do not neglect talking to your customers at the front of the process, or else it's going to leave a lot of quality insight on the table. And really, in many respects, they can be flying blind in prepping that value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's and then it helps get you clarity and helps the company as well align more with what customers want from them and what their customers are looking for. So it really helps them as well just get in the right mindset and helps them rally around what they really should be focusing on. I think having that, talking to customers up front and as often as possible, even every quarter should be ideally doing a set of have some time set aside to do a couple of customer interviews so that data is kept fresh as the company grows and as things change in the world. But having that information, being able to speak with customers is really, it's very powerful in helping you make sure that the value propositions that you're communicating are what's attractive to customers and what's going to actually help them come through the door. And it's not that top-down approach, well, we do A, B, C, so that's what we'll tell our customers.
That's a good way of thinking about it. Build customer discovery, customer interviewing as a weekly habit rather than something that's done ad hoc. It's just a continuous learning process, just something that's part of our core job and our role that we're performing regularly to be able to stay on top of those trends, those themes, and those insights and needs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've done a lot of through my work is value proposition testing. And a couple of ways that I've found really effective for that are using email campaigns to small subsets and cohorts of customers, and also using Google AdWords campaigns, testing multiple different value drivers to be able to, again, work towards understanding what those more favorable hierarchy of needs are. Do you have any other strategies or approaches that you've seen that might be helpful to listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So even doing user testing, so very quick user tests, 5-second tests, even things like that, where you have just a hero section mocked up with the headline and the subheading or the core value props. That's really good to have a gauge on how well or how clear the value proposition is, and not just what the value proposition is speaking well to them, but how clearly it is communicated. So how easily are people able to understand what you're communicating and what actually sticks most in their mind. So as you mentioned, it's not just what inspires people to take action, but it's also what people remember the most or what people take away or are able to recall after seeing a hero section for a few seconds and something like that.
Good point. Okay, just closing up with 3 quick questions now. So, signature question, an experiment that you've seen or performed that completely reframed your perspective on a challenge or a problem you're trying to solve.
That's an interesting one. I think there was one done not too long ago. I've done about a year ago, sorry, with a mentee that I was working with, and they were testing. This is not specifically related to value propositions, but they were testing a paywall or a sign-up wall. They had an app that functioned a little bit like Quora. They had a website that functioned a bit like Quora, but they wanted to drive people to open an account and actually download the app as well. By doing so, if they would download the app and they would still keep using it, it would still be free, but it would give them access to more questions and answers in sort of like the Quora format. But what they were doing, so the paywall that they had, so it's like when you go to a news site and there's a paywall that comes up and you can't scroll down a certain amount of the page, below a certain amount of the page. So they had that come up, and they had the copy that was pushing them to open an account and download the app so they could actually keep moving forward. But the copy that they were testing was really talking about all the benefits of why they should do it. So it was actually really calling out the value prop. Actually, it is a value prop test because they were actually talking about the value props. It's great. It's easy. They were saying thousands of people, hundreds and thousands of people use this, and people are seeing results every day, so things like that. So, and an invitation to sign up now. So they were doing what I would say, quote unquote, best practices and trying to actually follow by highlighting what the value propositions or what the benefits were of signing up. But what we realized, it said, well, that paywall is actually really interrupting them with what they want to do. If you think when a user comes to a site and want to read a news article, there's a paywall there. It's one of the most frustrating things for people to get around. So at some point, they either get super frustrated and never come back to the site again, or they actually end up paying, or they end up signing up and opening an account just because they actually really want to keep doing what they wanted to do. And so the paywall, that sort of the sign-up wall that they had, it was generating a lot of negative user feedback, unfortunately, because people were very frustrated by the fact that this wall and they couldn't get past it. So what we found was that we said, well, because it's an experience that's extremely frustrating for people, how about we frame it in a slightly different way? How about we frame it as something that, well, this is the next step that you need to do so you can actually just unlock more answers. So you can stick, these are results, you've got these results, you've got these answers to questions and answers. If you actually sign up an open account, you're going to unlock more. It's free. It takes less than a minute to do it, but you can basically get back to doing what you were already doing. It just takes a minute. We saw then they have quite a significant amount of traffic, so they got to statistical significance very quickly, and they basically doubled the number of sign-ups with zero negative user feedback. So we actually saw that instead of talking about the value propositions and the why, because this was happening at a high-touch moment where they were actually in the middle of doing something, that paywall was disrupting their activity. No one cared about the value props. No one really wanted to know why they should sign up. They wanted to know how quick and easy it was to get through the paywall, or what they had to do to get through the paywall, or what the risk was of opening an account. They really wanted to just know, can I get through this and get back to what I was doing as soon as possible? And so that was something that really opened our eyes. And so we understand that people were just not interested in learning about the benefits. That was something that we could send them in an email later. They were just really interested in getting back to doing what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pattern that I've also read about previously, that, yeah, if you want to get back to accessing, utilizing the value that you were before we interrupted you, then just do this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
great example. Any resources that you'd like to recommend to listeners that you've found really helpful and beneficial?
Absolutely. So if anyone is looking particularly to brush up on their copywriting skills with regards to especially conversion rate optimization and experimentation, definitely Copy Hackers is probably the place that I would recommend that they go. They have wonderful free resources. The paid resources are also very, very good and definitely worth the investment. I don't get anything for saying that, by the way. I just think that they're fantastic. But they have a strong focus on A/B testing, on experimentation. So that's built into the copywriting process. So for people who are in conversion rate optimization and experimentation and are looking to strengthen their skills in that area, that's where I'd recommend they go to. Excellent.
Good suggestion. And final one, if people want to get in touch, where can they reach you?
Yeah, usually LinkedIn is the best place.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much for chatting with us today, Eden. Really appreciate your time. It was awesome. Fantastic.
Thanks for having me. It was great speaking with you too.
That's all from this episode of Experimentation Masters. Just one more thing before we say goodbye. We can use your help to keep improving the show. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, you can email at gavin@firstprinciples.ventures. Visit firstprinciples.ventures for show notes, resources, and information. If you enjoyed this show, give us a share on social media. Make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Experimentation Masters. Lead with more confidence.